Good morning. I'd like to call the ApplyTexas Advisory Committee meeting to order at this time. And we would like to start with some introductions of those that have joined us here on the dais. If we could start. Yep.
I'm Rebecca Kinchy, ApplyTexas.
Good morning, I'm Angie Taylor with Sam Houston State University.
Jamie Hansard with Texas Tech University.
Michelle Walker with Texas A&M University.
Kevin Davis, Stephen F. Austin State University.
Mordecai Brownlee, St. Philip's College, Alamo Colleges.
Rebecca Lothringer, University of Texas at Arlington.
Claudette Jinks, Coordinating Board.
David Muck, ApplyTexas Technical Team.
Graham Chapman, ApplyTexas Technical Team.
Mike Washington, sitting in for Miguel Wazlewski.
Dara Newton, University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley.
Indra Paola Peláez, Houston Community College.
And if we could go through the careful introductions of those on the phone.
Tennille Richardson, Howard College.
Leah Hickman, Midwestern State.
Madeline Tolliver, Victoria College.
Rebecca Griffith, the Tarrant County College District.
Rosie Dickinson, Texas A&M International University.
Paula Arredondo, Texas State Technical College.
Great. If there's no one else on the phone, I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting and welcome those who might be watching online. At this point, I'm going to kick the agenda items back over to Mordecai.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. At this time, will you please take a moment to review the minutes from our last meeting on September 30th, 2019. Take a review of that and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed for all of our colleagues that are online. That email was sent to you. Let's see what time that was sent. That would have been 8:35 from Diana. So take a look at those minutes on the attachment and let us know if anything needs to be addressed.
Good morning, this is Rosie Dickinson. A minor correction on my last name with the members present. My last name is Dickinson with 2 I's.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you.
It appears as though we're still reviewing. However, when someone is ready to make a motion for approval, please do so.
I move that the minutes be accepted as processed.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed, the same?
Aye.
All right, we're approved. Thank you. At this time, moving to C, Rebecca.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to talk to you and give you an update on the annual report to the board. So every year, as a part of the ApplyTexas Advisory Committee, we have the opportunity to speak to the board here at the coordinating board to give them an update on the work that we've done for the past year. This actually happened last week, and Mordecai and I represented our committee and brought forth the report that was very nicely done by Claudette and provided to us. It was a brief update. The only question that they had, I'm trying to think, they had one question. It was very easy. Do you remember what question they had? I don't either. They asked a question, but I don't remember what it was.
I think it was the mainframe.
Was it? Oh, I think they did. I think they asked about what AWS would provide us to do. And so our answer was it would allow us to bring in additional features that have been requested and would help move us into a higher technological set of programming than we are right now. So, but it was very easy, probably a 5-minute update. And that was the only question they had. And we were done and went on our merry way. For those of you that are on the committee, Claudette did provide a copy of the annual report so that you can see what was given to the board. And then mostly what we did was talk about the summary of tasks below on that first page. Okay, that is the update, Mordecai.
Here we go.
Back over to you.
There we go. We move on to D. Update for subcommittees at this time. Strategic Planning, Mr. Mike Washington.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding of the progress of the Strategic Planning Committee was that they've developed 4 surveys that are going to be issued to 4 different subgroups: the students, parents, institutional representatives, and secondary school counselors. Right now, it requires coordinating board approval, so Miguel is going to meet with the coordinating board this week to introduce it and hopefully get approvals. If approvals are granted, the desire is for those to go out in January, and then the results of those surveys to be available for this committee in the spring meeting.
Now, question, Mr. Washington, in group, have we had an opportunity to review those survey questions?
I'm not sure. I need to.
Have we as a group reviewed those?
No.
Okay. Is that possible for us to be able to do, Claudette?
I do have access to the surveys, so I can send them to you all, and maybe, I don't know how quickly you want to go through those, but I can send them to you. They're actually online. You can quickly go through them, but I can share this with you.
Okay. Is that something that we see fit that we want to do today so we won't slow down the process?
Yes, and I can send them to you all. I'll have Deanna or myself, I can send them to the team, and I don't know if you want to revisit that later on in the
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sounds good, I'll do that.
And Claudette, with that as well, in our last meeting, we had discussed, those who were present on the phone had discussed changes to those 4 surveys, so whatever we look at today might not include the suggestions that we already had. I don't know if he included that on there or not.
The ones I have are the ones that were sent, I think, when the subcommittee was on there. So that'll be what it's available. It wouldn't hurt to kind of go through them, and if there's similar comments, we can just add those. But the committee, there's a data committee that's here at the coordinating board that will review the survey, so they'll may have additional recommendations. And we don't know at that point, but Miguel has scheduled a meeting with our data committee, is going to be scheduled for December 17th. So once we know more, if they're approved to move forward, then we can share those. But share them out to those different subgroups. But I can send, in here in a little while, I'll send them to you, and then we'll revisit.
Okay, thank you, Claudette. Thank you, Mr. Washington. Anything else, sir?
No, sir, I think that's it.
Okay, then we'll move on now to B, logic of residency questions. Paula?
Yes, this is Paula Redondo. I have, the only update I have is we are currently working on scheduling a meeting. We were having some difficulties because of just a lot of activity.
Hold on one second, Paula. I'm so sorry. I'm having difficulty hearing you. I'm not sure if that's on our end or your end, but can we try to adjust that sound if we could so we can hear you?
Yes, I am working on scheduling a meeting to discuss the residency question.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, anyone for Paula?
Paula, do you know when you might want to schedule that meeting?
Well, I'm hoping to do that either this week. I know that many individuals are leaving early for the break. If not, the first week in January.
I think that it would be okay if you targeted sometime in January. I'm not going to say that you have to have it this week or the first week of January. Our next meeting, I think, is in February, so we have a little time for you to be able to schedule that so that you'll be able to get the optimum amount of members that are on that committee to attend.
Yes.
Thank you, Paula, for sharing that.
Any other questions, comments for Paula? All right, moving back to item E for Rebecca.
Okay, let's get into the meat of the matter now. We want to have our update from the ApplyTexas technical team about the great work that's been going on.
Thank you. I've got some current cycle updates first. We continue to add folks to the additional application delivery times that we've introduced in the last year, and that's been going great. We especially noticed a nice impact on our December 1st and 2nd normal delivery. That job did not take as long to run this year because some applications had already been delivered at, excuse me, 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. that day. So that was a nice side effect. If additional folks are interested in receiving applications at other times other than 6 p.m., please reach out to us. Our help desk is continuing to reach out to school districts across the state that have been blocking our emails, any external emails, and that is an ongoing process and has also seen some nice reciprocation, and we've been fortunate enough to get a lot of districts to help our emails come in. We've seen a reduction in the number of fake apps because of our email requirement, verification requirement. Applicants are now required to verify their email before they can submit the application, and we've seen a nice reduction in fake applications. Similar to how we strengthen the audits for high school code entry, we strengthen the audits for college code entry to reduce the number of blank college codes that were entered on our applications. And thus far, we've seen a decrease of applications that have selected school not found, down from 6.8% last cycle to 3.3% this cycle. And blank, we're now disallowing blank, so that's gone down from 4.2% of applications to 0%. Again, we want to encourage folks to reach out to us if they're interested in participating in the transcript request service, both at the high school level and at the college level. So far, applications, some numbers for the fall 2020 semester, for the completed fall 2019 semester, we saw a 3% increase in submitted applications. That includes a 9% increase in 2-year applications submitted and a 0.3% decrease in 4-year submitted applications. And so far for the incomplete fall 2020 semester, we're so far up 2% on submitted applications compared to the same time last year.
David, could you please give that statistic once again for 2-year and 4-year application?
Sure. So this is for the completed fall 2019 semester. Overall, we saw a 3% increase in submitted applications. 2-year applications were up 9%. 4-year applications were down 0.3%.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. And then some of the approved proposals from last session, we went ahead and reworded the question, asking applicants to enter previous and current college information. That's completed. We modified the instructional text on entering first, middle, and last name information. We modified the language regarding sending official transcripts from all previous institutions. And then the Senate Bill 25 requirement has been completed. This is the requirement that applicants be allowed to indicate their desire to have their application forwarded to other institutions offering the same program and major. That's been added, and we started transmitting that data on Monday, October 28th. Q&E for applications was also modified to display that data. Questions on any of those? Okay.
I do have a question that's sort of related.
Okay.
For the email verification that you put in place, at TACRO had several people asking about whether on the test site you could remove that email verification feature because everybody's having to make up a bunch of email addresses and.
I should have updated, someone did reach out to us, and we did remove that requirement in the test.
Yeah, just in the test
just in
environment.
test.
Great, thank you.
So new proposals, we had a proposal, so right now we collect 2 parent or guardian addresses on the second page of the U.S. freshman application. One of those we auto-populate. The first one, we auto-populate the parent address 1 with the applicant's address. We don't do the same on parent guardian address 2, and we got a proposal to add that feature. It would be a small change, relatively easy, and I think it's a great suggestion. I don't know if that's something we vote on right now or wait.
I think that question will depend on how deep some of the other changes are. If there's some, if you think they're level enough, like surface level enough that we could do them all at one time, or if you think we need to have some real discussion, then we probably need to do them one at a time.
This is such a minor change that my suggestion would be to go ahead and do it, probably.
So any questions on this one then for David about filling in the second address also with the student's address? I do actually have a question about that. If we pre-populate, there's 2 addresses. If we pre-populate the first one with the student's address and then we pre-populate the second one with the student's address, is that what you're saying?
Yes, so actually, they do have to take an action. There's a radio button that says, do you live at the same address?
That was gonna be my
If
question.
they click on that, then it populates it.
Perfect. That was gonna be my question. Is if we're just
Sorry, I
doing it
didn't
in-
explain that well.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a motion or any other discussion? Is there
Are
a
we
motion?
having continued discussion about anything technical?
At this point, hi Becky. At this point, we're actually talking about the pre-populating the 2 student addresses.
Okay. I don't have a question about that.
Okay. Anyone like this idea? Want to make a motion to put it in place?
A motion that we pre-populate if the radio button is selected.
Thank you, Kevin.
I'll second that. This is Becky.
Very good. Thank you, Becky. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Very good. Okay, so we got approval for that one. Becky, you mentioned that you had a question before David goes on. Should we go back? Let's go back and let you ask that question if you had something from previous. Is it something he's already brought up?
Yeah, and it's something that I wish I had noticed when we met last time and asked for this. On the new statement, have an official transcript sent to each university to which you apply. It is your responsibility to submit official transcripts to each university applied. Some of us aren't universities, and that might confuse our students or mislead them. I wonder if we can update that sentence to say university or college to which you apply in both cases where university is mentioned.
Yep, we should have caught that. Okay, right here, official transcript. David, what would that mean? Do you know what she's talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Again, that would be a very minor change.
Thank you.
This is one of the previous, thank you, Becky. One of the previous from last time where we were talking about the official transcript. We're changing the wording. Got it? Okay, so David has said this will be a minor change. I agree with Becky that would, something that we should have caught last time. Thank you to Becky for catching it this time. I think we should probably do a motion for this one since it is a change in the application as well. So is there a motion to make this change?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Becky. And a second?
Second. Sorry.
Sarah. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay. Very good. Any questions from anything that David has mentioned previously before we move on? Any other questions?
This is Becky again, and David, I'm just going to mention that we still have experienced bot application uploads at Tarrant County College. So the CAPTCHA may be, or email verification may be getting some of them, but we're still having them come through.
Okay, thank you, Becky.
Okay, I just have one question. David, on the, where you are saying we would like to encourage more high schools to participate in the transcript request service, what does that look like to encourage them to do that? Just like we're emailing more people, or we're asking them to in partnership with y'all, or like what kind of marketing
and
is
some of
going
them
out for
tune
that?
into these meetings and aren't aware that such a service exists, and so I'm just throwing it out there. We'd love to have more high schools participating in that.
Okay, I didn't
That's
know
it.
if there was some other kind of like general email or other release or something going out. Okay.
All right, David, back to you.
We got a new proposal to add functionality to the administrative site that would allow administrators to make entire schools unavailable. The current functionality, they can go in for each semester and make a particular major unavailable. If they want to make the entire school unavailable, they have to reach out to our administrative help desk. And so the proposal is to allow them to do that through the site. This would be a next cycle change.
As in fall 2021?
Yes.
Okay.
This proposal, this next one is very similar to the first one, and we think pre-populating it will help quite a bit. But there's a proposal to send the same address for parent 2 in the EDI that we send with parent 1 if the applicant indicates they live with parent 1 and with parent 2. Right now, they can indicate they live at the address and not fill in the address. And so the proposal would be if they indicate on both of those that they live with parent 1 and parent 2, and if there's an address with parent 1, to send that same address with parent 2.
But if you're populating it, then they would have to have
Right, we think by pre-populating address 2, we think that will take care of this request.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that if you pre-populate it, if they do nothing, right, it's gonna stay, that address.
Right.
I mean, they don't have to click something to say, yes, this is parent two's address, or it goes away.
Right. they
Okay. Yeah, so I would think this is kind of redundant.
don't. I think so too.
And I hesitate a little bit to put something in the EDI that they haven't indicated themselves somehow, some way. That gives me a little caution. Because, I mean, they will answer questions
Yes.
in conflict throughout the entire app, as we know, so I don't know. I think with the other change, I'm not totally in favor of this one.
I think that gets to my concern from the first one. If we start filling in everything for them, they're just going to leave it filled in as is without actually even checking it.
And just for clarity, David, there's not a radio button with this. It's sole populated data, correct? It's just, there's no radio button with this one.
Right, they're asking us to make that decision in the EDI. If the parent 2 address is blank, but they've indicated they live with parent 2, then send this, and they've indicated they live with parent 1, then send the same address that has already been sent for parent 1.
How does that look in the application where they indicate that they are living with parent 1 and parent 2? I don't remember.
For each parent guardian, there are 3 radio buttons, yes, no, and reset this question. And the question says, do you live with this
Okay.
parent guardian?
And it doesn't default to anything? Is it just blank?
Correct, it does not default to anything.
Does it require an answer?
Yes.
So does that question come before the parent address?
Yes.
So can you populate parent 2 in the actual app only if they say yes to that?
Yes.
See, I would think that would be more appropriate. Then you've got it there. You know,
Right,
it's
and
kind
that's
of a
why-
help to them.
Yeah, and that's why I think the first proposal will take care of this. Because if they answer no, it won't pre-populate it. If they answer yes, it will pre-populate it.
Oh, okay. That's how that's going to work. Okay, I didn't get that part of it. So, yeah, I think that that's appropriate enough. Again, it depends on how we actually create our app, but the concern is, the physical view of the app, you'll see no address. And then your EDI, which most of us don't see, will have an address. And I think we would be panic thinking, oh my gosh, something's wrong with our EDI because there's no address here. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that.
So with the first change that you brought up in our new proposals, do we need this change? Because you just mentioned you think it'll take care of it.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
Okay, all right, then, do we have agreement from the committee that we do not need this change because we've already put one in place? Okay, then I think we actually have to have a motion on this one to say that we're gonna have to say no. So I need a motion that says we do not push this one forward.
I move that we do not push this forward based on the fact that another change that we have approved will satisfy this.
Very good. And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kevin. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
I think it's a little bit fast for Becky. All right, motion carries. Thank you.
The rest of these are pending requests from the last time we met. I'll go over them real briefly. I don't know if we want further discussion now or today. The first of these is there was a proposal last time to add an audit that would that if applicants indicated that they have college credit hours, the proposal was to require them to enter the name of the previous or current institution on the U.S. Freshman app. They don't currently have that requirement. That was the first. The second was a proposal to make available the same application types for 2-year institutions that are currently available for 4-year institutions. Then we had a request asking that we require applicants to answer 3 questions related to establishing domicile in Texas. I think that the subcommittee has not yet had a chance to meet regarding that residency request. And then there was a proposal to install a College Board integration that would allow applicants to have test scores sent to institutions from within the ApplyTexas site. And the status of that last time was that we were going to push this one off till we were moved over to Amazon Web Services. And then there was also a proposal to allow the selection of more than one major for graduate applications. Currently, they can only select one major for graduate application.
Hey, David, before you move on to the AWS updates, can you go back to the update, the request, by Tyler Junior College that they made in regards to the 2-year institutions making the same application types available? So what are the implications in regards to that, so our colleagues from Tyler and other 2-year colleges can understand that a little bit better?
It would be a big change in the current functionality of the site. It's definitely something that would be more appropriate to consider with the move to AWS rather than with the current site. I think that would be time not well spent. So right now, 4-year institutions have the option of 8 different application types: U.S. freshman, U.S. transfer, transient, undergraduate readmit, international transfer, international freshman, U.S. graduate, and international graduate. The 2-year application, there's currently one flavor that gets modified on the fly. If they indicate they're not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, then we mark that application as international 2-year. And we present them with preliminary visa questions rather than Texas residency questions. And that's the main change. Rebecca, is there any other change, do you recall, other than that? But applicants currently don't select, as part of their application creation process, 2-year applicants don't, that different flavor of application. It's just 2-year. And then we make the decision for whether they're presented those Texas residency questions or preliminary visa questions. So I think it's more than that. The proposal is those other additional application types that the 4-year institutions have access to. We haven't done a full evaluation of what that would mean, but it would be a pretty significant change in the application.
Thank you, David.
And then that's really all I had. We're continuing development on the counselor reporting suite, administrative site, and applicant site, moving to Amazon Web Services with our focus right now on the administrative site.
All right, let's go through the ones that you just brought up, David, on, from last time. Let's see, where up I need to go, okay. What I think we need to do at this point is get an update on where you are with these. Some of these you said, well, we need to push off to, it'd be, one of them we're definitely gonna push off until we're on AWS. One of them would be better to push off until we're AWS. But I think at this point, because this is the meeting where we have to decide what we're pushing forward, I think it would be good to go back to the proposals that you're asking from last time, or you're telling us about from last time. Tell us what your workload would be and what your suggestions are about whether this is something that could be done. And then as a committee, we're gonna wanna talk about, is this a priority for this time versus it's not a priority if something else is more important?
The biggest discussion in our current development timeline would be adding those additional application types to the 2-year application, because that would inform a lot of how we are redesigning things in Amazon Web Services. And then we'd want to know, okay, all 8 of those application types, a subset of those, what would the committee think? So that would be the biggest of these. The audit would be the audit requiring applicants to enter the name of the previous or current institution if they indicate they have college credit, would be a small change. The 3 questions related to establishing domicile in the residency section, as it's currently constructed, would be a small change. It would just be auditing to make sure they had answered those 3 questions. I think that there was the sense last time that the subcommittee meeting on residency was maybe going to take a broader look at the Texas residency questions, and this would be a part of that. So it sort of depends what comes out of that subcommittee, I think, what they think about the current residency flow.
Paula, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Could you give us an update on what your agenda items would look like for the subcommittee? What exactly are y'all going to discuss?
We're only discussing the 3 questions, the additional questions that had been proposed to make as mandatory.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like we could give you an answer for that. Is it, you said it would be a small change as currently written?
As currently written, it would be a small change.
Okay, so let's, on that one, Paula, since you're going to try to have your meeting sometime before the next ApplyTexas Advisory Committee meeting, if it is and continues to be a small change, it may be something we could sneak in at the next meeting for this cycle. Okay, David is saying yes by shaking his head. I'm going to put him on record.
Sorry.
So I have a question about proposing minor changes, and this has to do in the residency section. Is it appropriate to ask for that now, or are you going to have a time later that you request it? This is very minor.
So on the agenda, or you mean in general?
In general, or
Okay.
on the agenda.
Okay, on the,
Do you have a time, like, because at TACRO, we did a session, and there were a couple of things that were brought up that I think are worthy of consideration. So I'll just tell you what the residency thing is, and I can't believe that no one's noticed it before. There may be a reason for it, but several people brought up the fact that in there, when we have questions about, there's a question about how long has your parent or legal guardian been married to a Texas resident? And it says months and years in that order, and they said they find that the student is putting the years in the month field and the month, because you anticipate year, month. And we do that twice that I can see in that section. Of more concern is the one that says, how long have you lived in Texas? And so if we could flip those, years, months, because really you're having to kind of assume, and I just thought it was funny because I thought, I've never seen that, but they're right. I mean, and kids assume a lot of things, as you know, if you don't give them answers, yes, no, they're going to click where they think that yes or no ought to be without reading the response. So that's one minor, but I think important.
That would be a very minor change.
Right.
So Rebecca, will that be listed as a totally separate request then?
Yeah, I think we're gonna put it under F. So under F, we're gonna have an opportunity to talk about new. So thank you, Michelle, for bringing that up. I think on the minutes, you'll probably find that under F for next time, just to make sure we keep them. 'Cause for one thing, it wasn't formatting in my notes, so I'm just gonna move it to F.
Okay, and I'll save any others for later.
You're fine. Hey, look, F is next. There. So, okay, David, so we've got the first one, the audit is a small change, the proposal for the app types is huge, and better to save that. The request for the 3 answers could be small changes written. Paula's group is going to be looking at those before the next meeting. Okay, so on the coordinating board integration, you had mentioned that you think this is better to wait till after AWS as well.
Yes. And additionally, they would have to make some changes, the College Board would, to the functionality they've already developed. So I think we definitely want to push that one off.
Okay. And here's where I'll bring up again that I think we need to talk to the coordinating board. I'm not sure who's reaching out. We need to talk to the coordinating board.
I've been in contact with them.
One of the questions I have, and you may not, David, want to be the person that brings this up to them, but I see adding that on there as somewhat of an opportunity for students just to click a button and pay money. And so one of the things I want to talk to them about, or maybe it had to be the way we word it, to make sure students just automatically aren't paying out because they think they have to, or they need to, because they see that opportunity there.
There were several follow-up questions that we developed at our last meeting that I just need to present to them.
Perfect.
And that was one of them.
Great. Thank you, David.
And I'm happy to continue reaching out to them.
Thank you.
What has happened to the multiple format, providing multiple formats for data to the institutions, providing in
We think that's
CSV versus EDI versus?
We definitely think that's a good idea, and we think that is another one that should wait till we're moved to
just
Amazon
checking.
Web Services.
Yes, that's one that comes up quite a bit. Okay, so that's a push. Okay, so grad apps selecting with more than one major.
That is also not a large change. I think we would probably, instead of defaulting to that, want to add functionality for each institution. So it's an institution by institution decision whether they allow applicants to select more than one major for graduate applications.
Perfect. And is there anything with your continued work on the admin side or counselor suite that we should note for the minutes, or that we need to consider for changes that you can think of?
We like how the new applicant site is looking on mobile devices. I hope so.
Okay. On the update section, David, do you have anything else to update?
No, I think that's everything I've got.
Okay, I want to go back through these, and so want to make sure that as a committee, we're looking at what we have requested, or what has been set up as a small change here that could go through for this year, and make sure that we're okay with those changes. If we have any discussion, now's the time to get them in there. So you have the audit for applicants with college hours to require the student to enter the name of previous institutions. Anyone have any comments about that to make sure David notes them before they get to work on this?
Is that in regards to the request from Angelo State last time that wanted additional language added to the application if a student selected college credit?
I believe that is where it came from.
Okay, so that would require additional language then in the top, related to the top question when they select the radio button.
The way I read the proposal was that the question, as currently constructed, asks them to indicate whether they have current college credit hours.
Correct.
They could then complete that page without having entered any current or previous colleges. And the way I read the request was that we would change that so that if they did indicate they had previous college hours, don't allow them to proceed to the next page without having entered at least one previous or current college in that section.
And I think part of that discussion was related to helping to define dual credit versus AP versus
Yes.
the other piece.
Yeah, my biggest
Testing.
concern is test credits.
Yes.
They are going to struggle.
So
I think that's why it was tabled last time.
Right.
I
I did think about language because that was something that was given to me. So
Good job,
So we can, so here's something that I thought about related to that. If they were to select college credit hours and that radio button, if it then popped up, are your college credits being earned through dual credit / concurrent enrollment or an early college high school? Then that would signify, if yes, then it would make the college become required.
Say that again, please.
Are your college credits being earned through dual credit, concurrent enrollment, or an early college high school? And if yes, then the college name became required. So I hit the radio button first. That question comes up. I hit yes, then the college becomes required.
If you hit no, then it would
And then it wouldn't.
operate as
As is.
currently.
Yeah, as is.
So they would still have they could still put an institution in there if they
Right.
chose to, but they didn't have to.
But they didn't
Yeah.
have to.
That sounds great.
You want to read it one more time?
Okay. Are your college credits being earned through dual credit, concurrent enrollment, or an early college high school? Then it goes to yes, no. As like radio buttons.
Audit, and I would never make it in the steno pool.
I should have sent it to you.
So this is Becky Griffith. And I'm thinking about this from an applicant perspective. Are your college credits being earned? Are you trying to say to them the college credits you already have or what you're applying to take? Because if it's applying, shouldn't it be something like, are the credits you plan to earn part of? Am I making sense?
Yes, you are. But what if they're currently enrolled in dual credit when they do the application? Aha.
Well, and that can happen because we see all kinds of fun things, but
Oh, Kevin's talking without his mic on, sorry.
I don't know. I think if you say plan to earn, they're thinking about the future application, not necessarily currently. But, I mean, I don't know. This a slippery slope.
Well, what if we take out being? What if we just use earned? Our college credits earned through, are your college credits earned through dual credit, concurrent enrollment, or an early college high school?
I like that better.
Becky, what do you think?
I think it helps, maybe.
Okay, I'm going to throw another one out there. So should we say have earned or currently earning? Should it be a slash on that? Maybe getting too much in the weeds, but I'm thinking about what could prevent confusion to the highest degree. And if you say have earned or slash currently earning.
Thoughts?
So this is on the freshman app, right?
Yes.
Freshman app, but it's not restricted to 4-year, it's on both, correct?
And we all look at
I
David.
would think, Becky, is that your understanding? This is on the 2-year app as well?
Yeah, it is. I'm looking at it.
Yeah. Okay, so I see what Becky's getting at. You know, if it was just a 4-year freshman app, it's a little bit different. And what if they're applying for dual credit at that institution? Does it still make sense? They're applying as a dual credit applicant using that. Does that question still make sense?
Well, so I'll speak. There's confusion that can come about, and we dealt with it this past fall, where you have a dual credit early college high school student who is going to be graduating, and then they submit another application as a college student, and if you're not careful, I'll just put it this way, if you're not careful, you won't turn off one valve and you won't hit the right valve at the next time. Next thing you know, you have an early college dual credit student that could potentially be on your books for free or whatever financial amount that you've declared for a dual credit early college high school student as a regular college student, and can present some implications for the institution.
I mean, totally agree with that. This is Becky. I'm really starting to feel like a separate application for dual credit early college high school is something that should be strongly considered for the future. I've just recently watched 2 big groups of our potential dual credit students out of one of our area high schools complete the application process, and so many of the questions are irrelevant to them and confusing. And that's a population that we're supposed to particularly be reaching out to. I mean, I've also expressed this to the coordinating board, that the residency questions that currently exist are not engineered in any way for dual credit. But I realize leads to a whole separate thing, but I will make that comment at this time.
Thank you, Becky. Yeah, the residency questions do come up quite a bit, and we'll note your comment for the minutes. And you're also right, that's a slippery slope that we can't go down at the moment with the residency changes, as those are often discussed in statute and rulemaking.
I will say, Rebecca, this is a great opportunity, though, for F, when F comes up, Becky, that we can perhaps discuss that once again, because I even shared with some of our colleagues here that I went to the SAC COC conference last week in Houston, and that was part of the conversation for those of us from Texas. Can there be a dual credit application?
Glad to hear that.
I know this is really on a slightly different subject, but at the same time, it's the same subject. With us asking these questions about how to word things, I think last year they did a usability study, and our application was, I think it was a 14th grade level. You know, I think as educated people, it becomes hard to get into a mind of a young person and actually word it in a way that they would read it and understand it. But I think it's a struggle we have to fight with all the time because, I mean, they're who we're dealing with. So I don't know. Questions like these become very difficult to answer from their perspective because they give us all different types of answers. But I think it's a fight we have to continue to fight. I don't know.
I agree. We spent a lot of time trying to reword the questions and then still get some of the same results. A lot of the same results.
So David,
ahead.
have you done anything to look at, I'm curious as to how big a problem this is. You know, have you been able to look at the data at all to see how often are students saying that they have college credit but putting no institution in?
I have not done that evaluation, no.
It would be interesting. I mean, you still can't know for sure if the credit is testing, you know, AP test. But you could, be interesting to know. I wonder how big a problem it is.
Well, at this point, I guess we know it was a problem for Angelo State because they were the ones that sent it in to us.
Well, I can attest for down in the Rio Grande Valley, it is a problem because but I think it's more on the enrollment side because as you move further through, it's not necessarily at the admission stage. It's related to how are we advising them appropriately. And when they don't self-identify during that application process, there's many times that you never know that they had dual credit work or a college transcript. And so I think it's probably sort of on both sides of as they're going through, where's the best place to identify that a college transcript actually exists when they don't self-identify up front through the application process. And then on the back end is where you start to have more difficulty in advising them appropriately and making sure that they are actually not repeating a class that they already have credit for.
Have you ever gone back to look to see if they even declared the hours on their app? Or would they just simply leave all of it off?
They leave all of it off.
Yeah. So this won't solve that necessarily.
Not for us.
Yeah. Yeah, we have that same concern.
Other discussion? I did put into Dara's original language, are your college credits earned, and I put in parentheses, are being earned through dual credit concurrent enrollment, or in early college high school, just to see if we like the or being earned. It doesn't have to be in parentheses, I just like parentheses. I think so too. It's probably not grammatically correct, but they're cool. If I don't use those, I use commas, so it's about the same thing.
That's too innovative.
Yeah, mostly outside, occasionally inside. Depends on the day. Okay, so we have a suggestion to the technical team, a proposal to the technical team to add this audit for applicants with college hours. David has indicated this will be a small change. Dara worked on some language in order to change the language going into that question. We have two proposals about this right now that we need to consider. One, do we want to push this forward as a change? So let's do that one first. So if there is a motion to move this forward, that would be awesome. And if there's a motion to move it not forward, that would be awesome. Just need to hear one way or the other. There is nobody talking. Y'all are quiet today.
Well, I move that we move this forward. It seems to me that it can help, and as long as we have a quick back-out plan, if we find that kids aren't able to complete their apps, we'll keep David on speed dial.
Do we have a second on moving this change?
I'll second that, Rebecca.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so then this one, which is just making a change to the audit, then let's see if we can do the all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, so we're going to make a change. Now let's talk about the wording. So I want to see if there is a proposal on the wording, a motion on the wording.
I'll just say, until the possibility of future discussion and development of a dual credit application, it may be more effective if the question and wording identifies students who have earned or currently earning dual credit that may assist with some of the clarity, especially in terms of processes at the institutions themselves and how they may be pulling down their reports.
Would anyone like to?
Okay, I'll move that the wording would be, are hours earned, parentheses, or being earned, parentheses, through dual credit, comma, concurrent, comma, or early college, high school. That way I think it still gets to what you're talking about, but with less words.
Okay, let me see if I've got it. Are hours earned or parentheses, or being earned, close parentheses, college credits earned through, is that right? Say that again, Angie. Making sure I got it right. Earned through dual credit, concurrent enrollment, or an early college, high school?
Sarah, did you start yours off with our oh, you started off that. Okay.
Are you a freshman?
Okay, agreed.
I'm sorry, can you read that one more time?
Okay, let's do this. Are your college hours earned, parentheses, or being earned, close parentheses, through dual credit, comma, concurrent, comma, or early college, high school?
You could also go the other direction and say how many of these hours are credit by examination. Is that the main concern we would have?
I think based on what San Angelo submitted, the driver is capturing the college that they have earned their credit, which if we ask the question the other way, would not get to the intent of their request. And I'm reading into the request from what we reviewed last time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could. I mean, it reverses the question to be more precise, but then could still lead through to the follow question where we say, therefore, you should name the college.
I think in our minds, reversing it makes sense, but to the student, it would confuse them a little bit more. That's just my perspective.
I honestly believe we have a higher population of dual credit now than we do AP or other test examination, and so majority of them would have dual credit versus, there's still a balance, but I think more dual credit now.
All right, so I have, are your college hours earned or being earned through dual credit, concurrent enrollment, or an early college, high school? With parentheses in there. Any further discussion on the wording or the whole entire statement itself, as David mentioned, reversing it?
That shifted from credits to hours at some point in the edit. Is that what you want?
Yeah. I think students think more hours than they do credits.
like credit hours or something.
Did you say concurrent enrollment, or did you say,
I said concurrent enrollment.
okay, good. Yeah.
Okay. And Graham is bringing up, do we want to put college hours, college credit hours? Do we want to add credit in there somewhere?
The radio button says college credit hours. That's how the radio button reads.
So should we put credit hours in there to make it consistent? Okay, I'm getting lots of nods. Are your college credit hours earned, parentheses, are being earned, close, through dual credit, concurrent enrollment, or an early college high school? Okay. Now, if there's no more discussion about the wording, then I am open for a motion of some sort. Positive or negative?
Okay, I move that we, because I'm not going to be able to accept the language that Rebecca read for the question and move forward with adding to the application the selection of dual credit hours and requiring the first college to be entered. That was a terrible motion.
We'll clean it up for you. It's much shorter in my notes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Jamie. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, so that carried. Very good. Let's see, we've done the proposal for the same app type. We talked about that. It would be better after AWS. I'm going back through these again. Request to make applicants, the 3 questions about domicile. Paula's got that on her agenda for her committee. So that is going to be a change. We're going to discuss that at next meeting. To see how big of a change that'd be and if it's something we can push in. Coordinating board, David said they're working on that. Oh, grad apps select more than one major. Is this big, small? Because you were going, this is the one that you said you wanted to be able to allow the institutions to individually choose whether or not they wanted to do this.
Yes, it's not small, it's a medium level.
Yeah. Is it something you think could be looked at for this cycle?
I would suggest waiting for next cycle.
Okay.
By chance, do we know the institution's intent on why that was requested? Is it essentially to give a student an opportunity to, if they're not accepted into one program of study at that particular institution, but admit into another? Or was there another intent behind that request? Does anyone know?
I think someone sent that one in.
I think that's the main intent. And a lot of grad programs get very specific in terms of following a specific track. Maybe the actual program, you're earning a master's degree, but you've got 3 different tracks you can follow. Well, I know that there's some interest in, sometimes a student will apply for one track, and when somebody's reviewing their app, they find, oh, they're really more fitted for another one. Or maybe the student says, I could do either one of these. So it gives the student more opportunity. It really is a way for colleges to be able to consider a student for more than one, especially if they have enrollment limits in those grad programs. So I don't know, some of the other 4-year institutions, have you heard that concern at your schools? Is a desire for students to be able to indicate interest in more than one? How about y'all, Michael?
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little separate.
I'm the same at our institution. grad application is separate, so I would have to talk with our grad department, but it's definitely something that they might be interested in. I'm just not sure.
Okay, with this one, David has proposed that we hold this for the next cycle, which would allow us time to be able to check back with different graduate programs and get a better understanding of the purpose and what they exactly would need. Okay, and then the last change, I think Michelle had brought it up, the different formats for delivery, and that's something that we've been asked to push to after we move to AWS.
I did have a question about that because I got asked by someone. Would an institution be able to request more than one? Like if they wanted a daily CSV and an EDI, could they do that?
I don't see why not. We're hoping to expand delivery options quite a bit once we've gotten moved over there, both timing and format.
Well, just be aware that, I don't know who it was that asked, but at TACRO, they did mention wanting perhaps to have 2 forms of delivery for every file.
Okay, that finishes up our technical update. We are going to ask for an update concerning AWS later in the agenda. But at this time, we'd like to call for a break. We're trying to get some technical equipment set up here as well, so 10, 15? 10? Okay. 15? Okay, they're asking, we're asking for a 15-minute break. So that brings us back at 10:35 to continue on our agenda. Okay, see you in 15. For the Apply Texas Advisory Committee meeting. Apologize for a little bit of a delay, and we've been working on some technical issues here. I think at this point, we're ready to return to the agenda items, and Mordecai, you have the next agenda item.
All right, thank you very much. So now we're going to talk about discussion and consideration of proposed changes to Apply Texas forms and procedures. At this time, I know that we had talked about moving, so I'm just kind of going backwards here, moving Michelle's requests for years, then months, in terms of the sequence for domicile questions. And so I'm sure that our notes reflect that as well. There was also some conversation, I believe it was with Becky, and then I supported that as well in terms of the conversation regarding the need for a dual credit application, which I just made a note that that's something that needed to be reflected under F as well. Were there any items under E that were under discussion that just for the sake of minutes need to be reflected under F as well?
I would also have under F Becky's comment about the residency questions, specifically relating to dual credit students.
Thank you very much. At this time, David, I know I was hoping, I'm sure there's several others, to receive some information or hear some information, I should say, on the update of AWS, how we're tracking, and exactly what that is looking like.
So the main priority right now is getting the current functionality moved over there, starting with the administrative site, since before we can open applications, the administrators will need to get in and have their settings. So our focus right now is on the administrative site. We are doing some work on the front end of the applicant site as well. And then once we get those both in a state that we like, then we'll move on to the counselor suite. We are planning to change the user experience on the applicant site significantly for applicants, especially as it regards to the copy functionality. We want to improve that. And so we're going to try to have more common/profile questions for the applicant to fill out initially. And we hope that that'll provide a better user experience. It's designed also with mobile in mind first.
And so when will AWS be ready to go for our users?
We're planning on July 1st of 2020.
July 1st, 2020. Is there a pilot group that'll be identified as well, or is that all of that is being conducted with your team?
Right now, it's with our team. We'd like to open it as soon as we can for administrators to get in there and give us some feedback.
Very good. Are there any other questions from those on the call or those present in regards to the timeline for rollout and go live of AWS?
I just want to follow up on that. So when you say as soon as possible, like, is that end of January, February? Like, what kind of time frame does that actually mean?
Our goal is the administrative site by the end of January. And then the applicant site, we're hoping mid-April.
Very good. So this perhaps may be a question for then Claudette or for whoever is most appropriate for. In terms of communication, how are we going about communicating to our users, member institutions that utilize ApplyTexas, that, you know, as we're closing out this 2019 year, moving into 2020, how are we communicating the work that's being done with AWS, the progress thus far? How does that correspondence look like?
We are working closely with the ApplyTexas staff as we continue through this. There has not currently been any updates like this one because a lot of people don't really know that this is happening. It's just going to be happening. So to your point, we do need a communication plan to alert students, counselors, that there are changes. We've mentioned them on smaller scales, like at different conferences and during these meetings, or when we've gone to talk to groups when we train ApplyTexas, to let them know, that these things are happening because they have said we need these changes. So we've had that on a small scale, but not on anything of a large scale. But we have to plan something internally. More than likely, we'll be working with our external relations team to see how we can help support the notifications out to all the stakeholders. But that'll be communication between our two teams.
Is it the strategic planning committee, or who would be the most appropriate committee as we just talk about communication plans and correspondence rollouts? Because, AWS is huge. A lot of institutions are waiting on it, the functionality associated with it. I know that we've also talked previously, just this morning, about the surveys, and we want to review those as well. But as we begin to roll out those kind of correspondence, I'm just curious to know, is there a certain committee, Claudette, is it the strategic committee, or should there be a committee put together? Or what can we do to partner with you all to make sure that we can put some deliberate action behind communicating?
It would be most helpful to have, and I hate saying an additional subcommittee group that would work with us on a communication plan because of these areas. The capacity of our staff is limited, so doing a major communication plan is going to be limited. So if there's a group here that would like to convene, it's really talking about who your stakeholders are, how we can relate messages, and then work with our external relations team and UT ApplyTexas staff to kind of really get all of that together. That's what I would envision, because right now that's not really an area that our division is looking at currently, so that this is a good point to bring up, that we do need to have some others involved in this communication plan, especially at the institutional level, because my work is not limited, but more at a college access side, not necessarily the higher education side, where you all are. So there might be small limitations to what I know and how we might be able to communicate and the people that we need to communicate with. So that would be helpful if we can get feedback from this group, and hopefully a committee started to get that engagement.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump out there. I'm willing to chair that committee. And again, the purpose for the group would be essentially, as we move into 2020 and we talk about our strategic planning, we talk about our AWS Go Live, we talk about certainly with our TACRO groups in terms of strategic communication alignment. It's so important that for all stakeholders, as we move forward, that they are informed. Total respect to how we've been communicating previously, and my understanding is that essentially it's been the membership group of this body, as well as information that's been shared through the admin suite, and no criticisms there. I just see that that there's other opportunity in terms of how we're outwardly communicating the work of this group, as well as the hard work that's being done by Claudette, as well as David and his group and that team, that our stakeholders know that work is being done and that we're finding more ways to engage them. So that would be the purpose. Is there anyone on the call, or perhaps present on today, that would like to participate in that work?
I would.
I'm happy to help as well.
Just for the record, I do want to also remind ourselves that this did come up in a few past meetings about communication, not only for this new rollout, but for changes that happen within the application types, to be more proactive in that messaging. I think it was Madeline or someone who had mentioned that before. So that the need for communication, not just for the rollout, but for everything you all have going on with ApplyTexas would be extremely helpful. So I'm thinking the rollout, ongoing communications about changes and requests, and that there is a platform or opportunity for others that are not explicitly within the administrative suite have access, and that's to Kevin's point during the last meeting. So there's a lot that can be gained by creating this committee. I can see a lot of the heavy lift will be happening in the next couple of months, especially with the rollout. So I'm on board for that. So whatever you guys need, we can help.
I was gonna say, I will also help on the subcommittee. And then I did put a note in the minutes that we need to look at this as a permanent communication plan, starting with AWS, but then making it more permanent.
David, I have a question on the move. Will our file delivery change at all, or will that remain the same?
No, at least initially, we're still planning on sending the same format to NSC, the Speedy server.
Perfect. And then I'm assuming all of the links and everything will stay the same. It's just going to be something different that pops up on the site, right? Different look and feel.
Right.
Okay.
And I have a question regarding user end testing for the new AWS module. Are students or staff able to test it before it goes live?
Yes, we're planning on making it available to administrators first to test their changes. And sometime in April. And then I hadn't thought about it, but it would be good to get some applicants in there to look at it as well.
And I'll be happy to get you user and testers.
Okay, is anyone else interested, before I move on, in terms of participating with the subcommittee for communication? All right, thank you very much for those that are interested. In terms of additional items of discussion, does anyone else have anything that they would like to bring forward under F? Again, discussion, consideration, proposed changes to ApplyTexas forms and procedures. Go ahead, sir.
I guess not necessarily for this cycle, but I was wondering what our committee's focus was. I mentioned earlier about the readability. Are we interested in reducing from a 14 level to a more appropriate level, in my opinion? How are we going to reach that if that is one of our focuses or desires?
And that is that was the task of the Strategic Planning Committee to review. So I think what next steps, although slow going somewhat because of approvals and processes that need to take place, the surveys, and I think Rebecca sent you guys the surveys. I was having problems with my connection, but Rebecca did send all the surveys that Miguel and Zach Taylor have been putting together in order to gather feedback about the application, and it's supposed to be explicitly guiding towards the efficiency of the application. And so there was an address. I mean, these things are addressed throughout the survey a little bit. That's why I think feedback here would be helpful. Just know that again, it's the 5-year strategic planning committee, so they're getting the surveys. They've already done an analysis, and I think I'm rewinding because I'm trying to remember. I don't think that PowerPoint presentation that Zach Taylor had done at the summer meeting has been presented to you all. And so that is something that we could probably have them come to us. I don't know if it's too late to do that, but it's something what Kevin's referring to, and for those of you who have not seen, there is a PowerPoint presentation or a presentation that was done over the summer about the things that you're expressing, like readability. There was a really good slide that showed in comparison to other applications, like the Common App, Coalition App, and I think the Universal App. There was some question about, is this really apples to apples, because their customization within ApplyTexas and there's not in other application types, or other applications. So there's some questions about a lot of that, but I think the mobility is being addressed, making the application being more mobile. There's some things that the AWS transition is going to help provide, but to your point, Kevin, I think I don't know if you all are willing to want to hear that. I don't know if Zach will be able to be available to come to the meeting, or if we can have Miguel just kind of go through, or someone from the staff go through some of those things. Is that something that you'd like to see before we move forward for the academic year?
I think that'll be great.
I agree with Kevin. I think having seen it at the summer meeting, I think it would be good for the committee to be able to see what was presented. It was very interesting.
I'm gonna s-
Go ahead, Claudette.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I'd also add that one of the things, and we were discussing, Claudette, Rebecca and I, of the email that Rebecca just sent out to everyone, there's 4 links, I believe it's 4, right? 4 links to the surveys that are being proposed that will be dispersed to our stakeholder group. And so I think in the vein of what we're just now discussing, the efficiencies, the usability, when you begin to review and look at these links, which we're probably going to allow you all when we do our lunch break to just ask that you take 10, 15 minutes, because that's all that it should take you. These surveys are not long at all. To take a look at the language, the context, the sort of questions being asked, the tone of the questions being asked. Is it getting to the heart of what it is that we're asking for our stakeholder groups to respond back to us? So that's what we're asking for you to utilize. That perspective as you are reviewing these questions. And then let's come back, perhaps, recommendation, Rebecca, that we come back from lunch hoping that all of our colleagues that are on the call or participating on today have some comments or some feedback that they'd like to share with us. And it's in that same vein. Hopefully our February meeting, perhaps we can look at that presentation that's being referenced.
Yes, I'll talk to Miguel about coordinating with Zach Taylor, or if he has somebody else or himself that can present.
Thank you. Are there any other topics of discussion under F?
I wanted to ask, Michelle, you were nice enough to do a presentation at TACRO about Senate Bill 25. I know you sent me some notes on the discussion, but I thought maybe you could share that. The discussion, we had asked TACRO to put a presentation or on the session, or a session on the list for the conference, and Michelle took that over just to discuss how we might, outside of it being on ApplyTexas, how we might, as institutions, implement Senate Bill 25.
Well, the consensus was that we really have no way to implement that.
So profound.
I mean, we came up with all of very similar problems, that we all face. There are financial aid questions. There would be application fee questions, questions about app deadlines. How do you get supporting documents from students? So essentially, the Senate Bill 25 says that if you deny a student, then you have to send the institution who denies the student should send their application to other institutions that have the same program. Of course, we said there will be difficulty in determining what is the same program. And institutions do not have all of that data. Now, the coordinating board does have that data. So there were some really, I thought, very good, insightful recommendations, that if there is movement to really put this in place somehow, that we could potentially determine the same program based on zip codes. So all of us perhaps would have to identify in ApplyTexas the zip code that's related to the major that we're displaying, and then perhaps have some kind of website that shows a student the different schools that offer that. The consensus really was that students have the opportunity, if denied, to go back to ApplyTexas and copy their app. I mean, they could apply again if the school's application is open. So it's not like they don't have this opportunity. You can get into a continual loop as well, where, let's say Texas A&M denies a student, so we send their app to UTRGV, we send their app to perhaps Sam Houston, and then UTRGV denies, and so, oh, Texas A&M has the same program, so they send the app back to Texas A&M. So there's so many complicating factors here that nobody was very anxious to, there's no solution to implement this in any quick, easy way. Also, in IHE, we do not have a standard way to send application data. It all came back to, even though we don't necessarily want to recommend that someone else do it, it came back to that there are other entities that have data that could support this, perhaps, in a better way. Coordinating board with the College for All Texans website, perhaps that would be a place that could support some kind of resend of an application, or at least we could direct the student there, and if we could draw on data that was there perhaps in our deny letters, and we say, it appears you may qualify, or you may, so-and-so has a similar program, and tell them how to go into a website and make a request for consideration from another school. But there were so many implications, not just financial aid, but also scholarship. By the time you would transfer an app to another school, then the scholarship money might likely be gone. I'm not sure. I think we need to perhaps lobby the legislature next time to kind of show that, or figure out what is their real intent. What is it that they think is not happening? Because students right now can apply to multiple universities, and sort of their responsibility to know who offers what program. And truth be told, especially, well, a lot of students, they would be happy with multiple programs. You know, they're very similar. If they want to do, say they have their sights on PA school, well, there are a number of majors at schools that would satisfy that. So we're not in the position to decide that for the student. The student is. So that kind of was the bottom line, and I tried to outline for y'all in an email the things that were most problematic. But there were some people who gave some pretty good recommendations with respect to IT and how it might work, but it had nothing to do with individual schools doing it. It had to do more with perhaps College for All Texans taking it on.
So I'm interested in that concept. I'm trying to wrap my head around what that means. So when you're saying, because it's a website and there's no functionality currently in there to request, I mean, it sends you to emails or to a craft box or a customer service box when you send something in. What are they envisioning that website to do? And on another note, that website is going to be updated as well. I think maybe even combined with another website. So, you know, that would be good. It would be, to me, a good opportunity if we're combining to know that that's the direction, if that's a solution. But I'm still curious as to what that means, referring to College for All Texans, because it's just a site with information. So are you saying?
Right.
Are you saying to send them to a website to find out how to do something? Is that?
Well, actually, you know, somebody has to, somewhere along the way, we have to determine who has the same program. So our resolution for that was using zip code. And that data, I expect, resides with coordinating board, that they know all of the programs that are offered at all of the state institutions. And so that data would have to be translated, some kind of matrix developed. I mean, this is all have to be developed. And a student could potentially then, if denied, we link them to that site. They look at the other schools that are, that have the same program. That matrix would also need to include the deadline for that school, which is contained in ApplyTexas. College Board has it. Or not College Board, Coordinating Board has it. It might also have to include requirements for that school. Perhaps this links them back then, like if a student goes there and clicks on, yes, I'm interested in this program, and the deadline hasn't passed, maybe it sends them back to ApplyTexas. And in ApplyTexas, it has a pop-up that says, do you want to apply? Copy my application. So in essence, I mean, that's not 100% what the law says, because it says the institution has to send the app data. But that is just not doable. It just absolutely isn't doable. Nobody has the IT staff to, and we don't keep application data like that, whereas it's in ApplyTexas. I mean, the student can initiate that if they so choose, but it would be complicated, no question. It would have to be an interactive type of site.
Well, and potentially, I like the idea of the direction they're going, because I like if we were denying a student, we could put the link to College for All Texans into the denial letter. So in essence, we are trying to do our part with getting an application to another school, because we're telling them to go here. If ApplyTexas could then list, as Michelle's group, and Michelle is saying, the majors by zip code, then the page would actually have a list of all the majors that are out there for all the institutions, and under the major, all the schools that offer those majors. I do know it is harder to get the deadlines pulled in. I think the deadline is a good answer. My vision, as Michelle was explaining this, is perhaps under each college there are 2 links. One link to the school so they can look up the requirements for the program, and we recommend the students click on the link to go look at the requirements for the program before applying, and the second one to shoot them to ApplyTexas. And it mentions copy and send your application to this program. And that way it puts it back on the students, but we're still telling them you can apply to other schools. Go here and find out where you can apply. It's not exactly the intent, but or what it says. It could fulfill the intent, because I think the intent was to let students know you have options. This is just me reading between the lines, but I think it's an option thing. And this would show them a lot of options, but it would be from the website. I see it as links. The hardest part would maybe the zip codes and the deadlines, pulling the deadlines in.
That's right.
I understand that, I'm not opposed to it, just the capacity of, and who would be doing that internally. Like I mentioned, we had discussions about updating the website at one point in time. There is no funding to do so, so development of any kind of anything would be difficult. If there's a cost, and there's always a cost. So we can certainly explore this option. I see what you're saying, because it doesn't sound to me like, after TACRO's discussion, that there's like you said, an easy way to implement. So we have shared that with our external relations group, but technically we've met the requirement by having it approved and currently on the site. It's just the implementation is going to be difficult, and we have shared that with our external relations staff who work with the legislators. So we'll consider this option if there's an opportunity for us to be able to update the site and offer these to kind of meet the requirement, we'll work that out. But there are limitations, obviously, because of capacity and funding for development of any kind of website or, any kind of revisions to a website. So this is helpful, and maybe there might be another option.
Well, we could, as individual institutions, we could create a communication plan that says that, if a student's denied and they've said yes to this question, then we could send them a communication, which is probably better than putting it in our deny letter, because the student has to have said yes to this. Send a communication that directs them back to ApplyTexas, noting that there are other schools that are still accepting applications. The kicker is identifying schools with the same program, same major. I mean, we have absolutely no way of doing that. We don't keep that data. So, if that matrix of some sort could be provided somewhere, College for All Texans or on ApplyTexas in this case, we could do a communication plan to send them back there,
Right.
telling them to hit the button.
Well, one of the biggest things I think when we were talking about this last time was the fact that majors are not the same, even though they might be they're not the same thing, the way that they're listed at every institution. So it'd be difficult. You almost have to go into mapping what's in the actual course to determine or the coursework, is this the same? Because then that gets into transfer.
Well, does zip code, though, would that come closest? I mean, I would think that because all of your programs are approved, and there is a zip code associated with that approved program, would that be the closest we could get to the same program?
I
Seems doable to be able to have a listing of all the potential majors for the state, let's say, and that, like Rebecca was saying, in association with that, which institutions have those specific majors. From an informational standpoint, I think that'll give them, they'll hit at what they're getting at with the legislation in terms of just informing the students of what's available. The second part of that, though, would be in terms of how interactive do we want to be? In other words, how much does institutions need to be obligated to make sure that students make the linkages? Or do we just provide the links themselves and has the student hit on those links, the ones that they would have an interest in? That type of thing. So I think just from just ballparking it, just thinking of it just out loud, you can list I would think we could have a composite list of all the majors that are available throughout the state, and then look at what institutions are connected to it to try to get an idea of, just as a project starting out. Now, who maintains that, I don't know. I agree. There may be a job in terms of how you maintain that, because as programs change, someone would have to update that to make sure that it's available for the actual semester that you're talking. And some have fall-only colleges, and some are available in the spring. Those types of things would have to be mapped out. But
So would it be a year, like if we would say we are able to do this, wishful thinking, right? If we're able to do this, would this be a yearly update or a semester update? How often do programs change?
I would think a yearly would probably do it.
Update?
Yeah, a yearly cycle. But I think it has to be that it could change from year to year because of the fact that programs come and go at institutions, so.
Well, I think this is a decent recommendation for a solution to something that is difficult to implement. So we'll have to explore this a little bit more. Like I said, there are no guarantees, but I'm willing to listen to see how we might be able to, because I think we could develop that list, step one, by the codes, and then look at the deadline requirements are going to be difficult. But we can kind of work through this and see what could be available, and then maybe go from there. I know this is not easy. We talked extensively at some point, offline and online, about some of these challenges, so, but this is a good recommendation that I could probably share.
Very good. Does that conclude that discussion item? All right. Is there anything else that needs to fall under Agenda F, or are we ready to move on?
I have a question related to on the educational background page, and I'm happy to submit a request, but we have students that are pursuing an international baccalaureate degree, but as AP Capstone continues to move on the rise, it would be helpful to have a question that says, are you pursuing? Because many high schools still are keeping it as Foundation with Distinguished, and you have to be able to delve deeper with the student to know that they've taken the research class or the seminar class, and it would be helpful to know who is actually in that AP capstone program. And it would just be a simple yes/no question, very similar to the IB program. And I will do either. I will submit if I need to, and it can go next year, but it seems like that would be a simple addition in that area.
I think Darrell, let's get a formal submission of that so that we have it on record as well, because it is something that David, having heard it, can consider is that small or not, and we have the opportunity in February to see what their time capacity looks like. I think it would be best to get it documented. Now, there could be other discussion. I just want to make sure we go ahead and get it documented.
I had a couple other things from TACRO. One was a request to ask specifically for a student's international address on the international app, because we do find that students are putting a U.S. address for student permanent it's clearly not their permanent address. It is just where they are living currently. And that's problematic for reporting purposes. And the other thing was schools going to, I believe it was Lamar, that has gone to self-reported test scores, allowing students to self-report. And they asked the question as to whether or not that might be included in ApplyTexas. So allowing a student to report the components of the test score. And I believe I don't think they wanted students to be able to report multiple scores, but it would just be like their highest ACT and perhaps their highest SAT. But you would then get into, do you super score? And they might want, but if we implemented that, we would want that to be optional for institutions. So those that are not allowing self-reported, we can say no to that, turn it off and on.
So this is on the test score page where we ask which tests they've taken. We'd add an opportunity to enter their scores.
Uh-huh.
We used to have that and we removed it.
Did you have the components or just the total score on there?
I think it was the components.
Wow, we've come full circle.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
But we did used to have that. I don't remember why it was removed. I think they were finding a lot of discrepancies between the self-reported and what they were actually getting in.
Well, I think at that time, there's a movement much more toward allowing self-reported information, and there wasn't back then at all. So I think it would be good to revisit on their behalf. Lamar found a way to do it, apart from ApplyTexas, but there was indication that there perhaps may be more and more schools going that way.
What I'd say is that perhaps the communication subcommittee group, as we begin to formulate and work on our plans, there's opportunity to hear from other users around the state. Some of these, I'll use the term wraparounds that they're utilizing, that hopefully we can get a voice, hear back from all to see what these functionalities would do to to be utilized within ApplyTexas just as a whole. So some of these things that once were can come back, or some things that don't exist can come back, and so we can have a good means in which to hear back from our folks that are utilizing ApplyTexas.
Michelle, what was the middle request that you had from TACRO? Pursuit of IB, no, I have.
The international transfer app, having the international, asked specifically for their international address.
Would that just be messaging on the existing permanent address, or are they wanting a whole new set of address fields?
I would say a whole new set of address so that you would have, perhaps a student does consider another address as their permanent.
Okay, are there any other discussion items under Agenda F?
I just want to make sure I have them in the notes. Michelle, you had 2 requests or 3 requests?
2.
Okay, I've got those. All right,
You don't
thank
count my residency earlier.
Oh, we have that too.
Okay. At this time, Rebecca, Agenda G.
I would like to say that based on the discussion we have at lunch, we'll probably come back to F, revisit F about the surveys. So just to keep that on everyone's mind, that we will return to F for completion in just a little bit. But since we have some time still before lunch, let's go ahead to G, which is the discussion of the Speedy EDI ApplyTexas workshop. Okay, so as most of you know, if not everyone knows, in the summer for many, many years, we've had ApplyTexas workshop that has taken a couple of different forms, but most recently has been the format of more of a users sharing group. So we come together, we hear from the technical team about changes, upcoming changes, and different things happening to ApplyTexas. Then we break out into sessions where we've been able to help people understand better, users understand better the admin suite or the counselor suite, have discussion between 4-year schools, 2-year schools, scholarship sometime was presented, international graduate application tips were presented. So it's been attended fairly well. Usually around 100 people or so have been coming to those. And 3 years ago, I believe, we moved the workshop from June to July to line up with TACRO's 2-year college meeting and 4-year the university meeting that happened in the summer, which often they get together to talk about legislation and different issues coming through with those. We had been set right dead smack in the middle of the two, so that our 2-year schools and our 4-year schools could decide that they wanted to do ApplyTexas between the two and still go to the workshop or go to the university meetings or summer meetings. Well, I got a surprise at TACRO. Luckily, I was in a meeting where it was announced, because I don't know that we would have heard about it any other way. So TACRO was renegotiating their hotel contract, which I knew it was coming up, and somewhat expected them to reach out to us to say, you know, hey, how's ApplyTexas like this? It turns out that they did have a meeting, and Dana was invited to the meeting, and somewhere along the line, because I talked to Dana afterwards, Dana said that things were shifted around from the conversation that she heard. And what was presented to me at TACRO was that, or what I overheard at TACRO, was that ApplyTexas conference now has been shifted to Friday afternoon, starting at 1, after the 2-year and university meetings, which are somewhat going to be combined to an all-day Thursday and a morning Friday. So you can imagine my surprise. Since we have been a like 8:30 to 3 kind of conference the last several years. So I did mention to that particular group, I said that's not going to work for us. 2 reasons. We haven't done a half day before. I'm not saying that we couldn't, but we haven't done a half day before. But my biggest hesitation was nobody wants to be here on a Friday afternoon in Austin. People want to get out of town. They don't want to be stuck here until 5 o'clock and try to get out of town at that point. So I happen to know the president of TACRO currently, might be someone I live with. So he and I have had multiple discussions on this topic. Bless his heart, because he has to put up with me and all these things. But he has come back and asked what we thought about potentially doing Friday morning. And then if we could stay with a half-day session, we could get out at noon. Now, I've thought a lot about the half-day session. I want to open this up to conversation because I do believe it's something that is beneficial and expected from our users to be a way to get together for us to discuss ApplyTexas. Now, at the same time, the past several years, we've pretty much done the same schedule over and over again. I think some of it has been very beneficial, especially to new users. Others may be getting a little bit tired of doing the same sessions, and I make the same people speak basically every year because that's who I call. So I know A&M would like a break from doing several presentations. My thought was this. We have AWS that's going to be rolling out. At that point in time, it actually will have just rolled out. We have a subcommittee on strategic planning for the things we'd like to see coming into the new system, opportunities being available and such. What if we did take the Friday morning and we make this basically a planning group where we break people into small groups? We invite them to strategically plan the future of ApplyTexas. We bring them in, the technical team can talk about where they are, what's going to be available in upcoming opportunities through AWS now with ApplyTexas, and then we break into small groups and come up with ideas of things that we would like to see happen with AWS and present those at the end. So we have some direction for the ApplyTexas moving forward. We can use the communication plan to ask for folks that can't be there to please submit to us ideas that they have, and it might help us a little bit more with at least what's burning in the minds of people out there as to things they'd like to see for ApplyTexas. In my quickly trying to figure out what we were going to do about this, this is what I've come up with so far, but I am definitely open to suggestions. Of course, another opportunity, and I did not call them and I meant to, is to try to move this to another time at the Pickle Center and try to find our own dates. TACRO is not excited about that because it will mess with their contract and their hotel nights. But at the same time, I was not excited about the decisions that were made. So we're kind of at a standoff there. Okay, thoughts?
My concern a little bit is that the strategic planning subcommittee, you know, they're working hard on coming up with recommendations. And so we get a little concerned. So you invite others to provide feedback after this group may have already made some significant decisions based on their feedback. So we just want to be sure that if we invite that we're careful not to step on top of the work that's already being done.
To that point, and Mike, I don't know if you're prepared to speak on this. If not yourself, then Claudette. But is there anyone that can speak on the work that's been done thus far by the strategic planning group, where we are with that, a status update, and for clarity, is this one of the things that the group has been working on as well?
So I know that there was a formation of the committee. There was Zach's presentation at the summer meeting, the development of the surveys, which are going to be approved for additional feedback. There was also a request for data that's available through ApplyTexas. So that's pretty much where they are. The group has met, I think there's some of you that have been on the calls, maybe three times total. And it was really an update. The first, I think, meeting was to talk about things. The second was Zach's presentation. And the third was, again, the discussion about the surveys. So that's pretty much where they are. It's, I think there's a little bit of a slowdown here. I mean, this is a strategic plan for 5 years. We're already a year in, and we haven't really had much of that discussion, but I think it's more of an info gathering at this point, really to determine, based on what Zach has provided, the information, the realizations that Zach's provided, to see what the users and practitioners of ApplyTexas can say. So that's the next step. So it's more of the technical sides, not really the big picture anymore. It's more technical and feedback gathering, from my understanding. And that's pretty much all that's happened so far. I would agree with Michelle maybe not to do the strategic planning, but maybe invite the strategic and planning group to come talk to everyone. I just say, here's where we are. At that point, they should have the information from the surveys if the timeline is still going to remain the same. We had to go to this data committee for approvals for these surveys, so that's another thing. If they have to revise them at some point, I don't know if we have to go back again to ask for more information or approvals again. That process is new to me, but the expectation, if the timeline's correct, they should have some feedback on what they're hearing, and then can maybe continue the discussions about what the needs are. And it'd be helpful to know what the capabilities or what can be done based on that information through AWS. Like the mobility thing is one thing that Miguel has often talked about, and that's already going to be handled. But accessibility and readability,
Uploaded documents.
uploading documents, some of these things are already going to be addressed with this move. So it might be good to say, here's what is happening with AWS, and here's how some of the things are getting checked off the list, I suppose, and then hearing more about what has been determined from the field. The other thing that was a little bit, something that I questioned was the amount of individuals that are going to be doing the surveys, like where are all the platforms. Last year, Miguel requested the last group or last committee members to submit a list. I don't know how extensive that list looks. I don't know how they're going to, if they're sending it to specific groups, or, how controlled that survey implementation is going to be. So those are questions that I have personally, but, because if we come back with feedback and everything is different, or, if whatever feedback we might get might be limited. So.
And I don't think that's what I mean by having the groups come together. And I agree by having the strategic planning committee to present their 5-year, assuming it'll be ready by July, their 5-year plan to this group. But I think that their 5-year plan may or may not encompass what the users want forever. And so this would be an idea also to see what else is out there. I hope that we have a better turnout with surveys than we've had in the past, but I know we don't typically have a large number of people that complete surveys, or a large number of institutions that complete surveys. Not saying that there'll be a large number at this meeting either, but it would give us another opportunity to collect more information about what's on the mind of our users. And so I don't want to come in and say what we do at this workshop would supersede what the strategic planning committee has. Right. But if it's only the 5 or 6 of the committee members that are coming up with a 5-year plan, we may want to look at making sure that other voices are heard.
So is your thought to have a facilitated conversation around that? Because I could see it being a benefit. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's a good idea. I just don't know how it's going to be implemented. Is there someone who's facilitating conversations, bringing the two teams, bringing the AWS and update and the strategic planning, just kind of walking through that, what that might look like might help.
So, and like I said, this is just me trying to brainstorm and figure out what we were going to do, or what we could do. My thought was, we come in, the group comes together, we do have the technical update, where we are, what's rolled out, what's already in place, because it'll be after July. Then we had the strategic planning committee, which I hadn't thought of, but we had the strategic planning committee, subcommittee, do their presentation of what they have presented and their 5-year plan to that point, where they are with that planning, or what they have planned for the next 5 years. At which point I'd like to see the groups break up into small work groups to discuss among themselves other things that they may be seeing within their own schools, or what they've heard from users, or what they're seeing from their students. We could communicate with those groups ahead of time to say, this is what we'd like to do. Please bring this information with you to the work group or workshop. After we have a set amount of time, which this won't be that long because we only have about 4 hours if we go to 5. Then we would bring those committees, we'd ask, or the different work groups, we would ask them to each present back to the technical team and the subcommittee what they came up with at their table for consideration for future. Like I said, I think it would give us some insight into what people are thinking, if we're on the right direction, and maybe bring to light something we hadn't even thought of yet. Plus, it helps them be heard.
If we're going to have somebody facilitate the small groups, maybe it would be the strategic planning committee members. So you're marrying the two ideas. I think that might be helpful. So you're not stepping on their work and they get a chance to hear the additional information.
And again, please know, this is just my brainstorming. So if you have an idea and want to go a totally different direction, I'm open to that too. Like I said, the two things we have on the table right now is either trying to find somewhere else to do a meeting at a different time in different locations and do something more like what we've done before, or try to condense something into about 4 hours on a Friday morning.
So I don't know that I necessarily have a solution or anything, but I just want to bring this up. Because we are moving to AWS, and there has been a lot of anxiety that has been shared with me from colleagues about this, is hosting it in July too late? The benefit, of course, is that people are traveling there for TACRO, and so it's one less trip and much more fiscally responsible, I think, to hold it in that manner. But I think this year is a very important year for ApplyTexas. We're moving forward. We're talking about a 5-year strategic plan, these types of things. And so I would just counter that. Is it too late since the application opens on July 1st? And should we consider going back to June and hosting it in June? And I'm just throwing that out there because I know that, again, a lot of anxiety has been shared with me. So just want to throw that out there.
I have a question to follow up on that. If we were able to move it earlier, David, what's your last date of being able to edit or tweak anything before the opening in July? Will all of that have already been done at the end of user testing in April?
June 29th, no. I think we typically try to lock changes at the beginning of May. Would think this year would be June, early June. We'd want to lock down changes.
So could we even have a meeting in May instead of June or July this year? Is that too much to ask?
We've tried May before, and it's really hard with graduations and schools sessions starting, because we used to try May, and I think then it moved to June. June is something that we've considered, or something I thought about too, because we liked the June date. We didn't actually elect to move to July. It kind of was done for us, again, without really discussing it with us. The challenges we'll have with July will be location. So at this point, I need to find a location. Is Pickle Center open? I know it was very affordable for us. Everything cost us much less when we were there. If Pickle Center is not open and we end up going to a hotel or somewhere else, even if we're at Pickle Center, whatever the costs are, we'll be needing to cover the cost of that meeting with whatever we bring in from our registration fees. Because we won't have TACRO necessarily wanting to support us like they have in the past. Although they did tell us this year they want us to break even, so maybe that support's not quite there as much as it was before.
So I think June is, given that some of us open July 1, June is a good option. And I know when we had it in the past in June, you really had an opportunity to ask people to test and to do that more thoroughly, for them to know what the changes are early like that. I mean, it would be very, very helpful, I would think, all around. Because by the time July rolls around, I mean, mid-July, we've had the app open for 2 weeks. So it's like, it's a non-issue. We've had to figure out what's new and what's not and get ready for that anyway. So that would be helpful. The other thing that I heard somewhere along the way, I know where it was. It was A&M hosts a very important counselor group. And some of those high school counselors, one of them I think had presented here one time when we had that panel. And she indicated that they would be very interested in doing that again. I thought that was really helpful. So that's something to think about doing at the ApplyTexas meeting in the summer, is just having a panel of counselors come and tell us, what are their pain points. I do know one of the things they indicated was getting test scores. For students to get test scores to the institutions is difficult. And so that may be impetus for allowing the self-reported, in the future. So anyway, that would be interesting to hear from them, and they like having a voice in that.
So this is Becky, and I am leaning toward let's see if there's a good date for us at Pickle Center. If it's in June, like the first half of June, because if it's not Pickle Center, I don't know what kind of hotel you're going to be able to line up on this short of a notice, and that will be capable of a break even. Pickle Center has all the hotels, they're quick access, and I mean, it's a great option for us. The other reason why I favor a meeting in June is because if we were to hold the ApplyTexas content on Friday morning, you would be some community college people would be forced to choose between that Friday morning, which is supposed to be under the new format, our community college only time of the conference week in July. They would have to choose between ApplyTexas and that TACRO community college content.
They're actually looking to change that, so the community colleges would not be on Friday morning if we move to Friday morning.
Yeah, if we move to Friday morning, the community colleges would also be meeting that time.
No, TACRO's looking to move the 2-year meeting to not be on Friday morning.
I see. Okay. All right. So, but only if we decide that we wanted Friday morning. Is that right?
I think that's correct. I'm not sure if it's a permanent change they've already made or if we decide not to do Friday morning.
Okay. But either way, especially if we are going to have a separate meeting in June, I would like to see an ApplyTexas session on the agenda for that TACRO meeting. That makes sense? So that people who are there for just the general part of the meeting still get some form of an ApplyTexas update.
We're actually talking with the microphones off up here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I got really quiet. So I hear what you're saying. I wonder if it supersedes us having another meeting to say we'll have an update at the summer meetings, because then people would just decide to go to the summer meetings, could decide just to go to the summer meetings to get their update and not attend the workshop.
Yeah, I can understand that concern, but I'm just talking about a very brief update. And we could phrase it on the agenda as not replacing, not being a substantial discussion of ApplyTexas. Again, I think that's a courtesy that should be extended to those. I mean, that isn't just a sort of a whim kind of thing. I mean, some people just don't have the money to travel that many times. So,
Well, I also think that, or at least my experience has been, the folks that are going or that we're sending to ApplyTexas back when it was in the June format were more of our technical team. And then the folks that we're sending to the summer meetings, the TACRO summer meetings, are more of our management team that are more on the functional side. So I really see that we have two different audiences. So if we were able to communicate that the ApplyTexas meeting, if we are able to hold it in June, is going to be more technical for your technical team that is actually in there, pulling the data, inputting the data, all of that. And then we promoted, if there was a session or a time during summer meetings, which would be more on the functional side, changes we're seeing, talking about strategic planning, things of that. I think that could be a really good way to use both, because there will be folks that will have to make a financial decision and would only be able to attend one.
I like that suggestion, Jamie.
I agree. When we moved it out of June, my technical team quit attending.
And then just one last thing, can I add this? If we can't host it in June, the Pickle Center is unavailable, would it be possible to have maybe a WebEx from David or whoever, and it was specifically for the technical team. That might be an option too.
I think that's a great idea.
They would
Rebecca, you'll
probably
do
prefer
that, right?
anyway.
Right.
I think y'all might be talking without the mics again.
We are. As you can see, our lips moving and nothing's being said. No, we were giving David and Rebecca a hard time about saying, okay, the WebEx is going in the meeting, in the minutes, because it must be a done deal. So anyway, we're just giving them a hard time. Okay, let me do this. This helps me get some ideas of what you guys are thinking. The next thing I need to do is to check to see if the Pickle Center is open and available for sometime in June. Then I will secure that if so. If not, we will talk about this again on the next agenda in February, because we'll have to decide what we want to do.
So if we do move to June, does that possibly mean that, I mean, traditionally registration fee's been about $100. Does that mean it's going to go up, or is that?
It's possible it could go down. It went up at the hotels because the food was so expensive and the AV was so expensive. So I don't know. The hard part is we don't have funding, and if we break loose from TACRO, which would basically be what we're doing, we can't necessarily rely on their funding. So we'd have to make sure we do a really good job of guesstimating how many people are coming, and so that we can meet our registration. Our registration fee would cover the cost of holding the meeting. But the actual registration went up when we went to the hotel because it's so expensive. Okay, so that is the end of this discussion as I see it for now. We'll revisit this again. I'm going to stop at this point because we do have the lunch that's provided for the team here has arrived. Don't forget, we've asked each of you to spend about 10, 15 minutes looking over the surveys. We will come back at, I said 12:15? 12:15 long enough? Okay, right here saying yes. Because for those of you who always wonder what we eat little sandwiches and chips. So we're not having a full gourmet meal, just in case you've wondered. So we're going to come back at 12:15, and we will revisit agenda item F to get feedback on the surveys at that point. So anyone else, any final? Okay, so we're going to adjourn until 12:15, and we'll see you back then for agenda item F and survey reflections. Thank you. Welcome back to the ApplyTexas Advisory Committee. If I was waving on camera, that's because I wanted to say hello to all of you. So I was really actually trying to say we're back. At this point, we're going to go back to agenda item F again. We asked for the committee to take a look at the surveys during the lunch break. And agenda item F is actually Mordecai, so I'm going to turn this back over to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully you all enjoyed your lunch as fast as you could. Thank you for joining us again. So we have 4 links that Rebecca sent out here. The first one was ApplyTexas survey for secondary school counselors. Second link here is ApplyTexas survey for institutional professionals using ApplyTexas. Third link was ApplyTexas survey for students, and the fourth was ApplyTexas survey for parents. For those that have had an opportunity, hopefully that will be everyone on the call, and today I had a chance to look at these. You'll notice that the first link, secondary school counselors, is the most comprehensive of all the surveys. And then from there, it begins to taper off a little bit in terms of the specialization of the questions that are being asked. Students surveys less than 5 minutes, parents is less than 5 minutes. But for those that were, my question is those that are part of the strategic planning team, my understanding is that you all played an important role in the formation of this survey. Is that correct?
I would say no,
Okay.
but we did review them in our last conversation, or our last meeting.
Okay, so you did have a chance to review these.
We did review them, and we made a list of recommendations that have not been reflected in the links that were sent out.
Okay.
But Miguel has that list and is supposed to be updating the surveys.
Okay, so then perhaps we need to make a note then for us to review those as revised prior to an official approval of some sort. I know when looking at the secondary school counselor link, and you all tell me your thoughts, you may have already discussed this as part of y'all's group, but I was noticing the first 4 questions are all open-ended questions. Tell us your student experience, and it's a block. Parent, guardian, tell us your experience, and it's an open block field. And then it's tell us your personal experience, and then it's an open block field. And then comparison to other systems in terms of the competitiveness of the other systems, it's another open block. And then we get into some time questions of how long does it take students, I believe the question is students to complete, how long should it take students to complete? And then you get into some other boxes of percentages in which we're asking some things. And so did you already discuss the kind of questions that were being asked and making sure essentially that we were getting to the heart of what was to be asked and what was to be determined at the as a result of the survey?
So I don't think we talked specifically about that. We didn't go into a ton of detail because Claudette brought up a good point that the people who sit on the data team or whatever group is meeting tomorrow, that they really dig into these questions and provide excellent feedback on best wording and different choices. So I think we didn't spend a ton of time because we really wanted to hear the feedback from that committee instead of us just spinning our wheels. And so we thought we would see what they had to say first with their expertise, and then we would come back and review. And then also just in general, the files that were provided here show all the questions, but skip logic is available in here. So when you read it, it looks like you're having to answer everything, but that was just for us to see all the choices. It really is logic-based.
Michael, did Miguel give you a list of any of those recommendations that he recorded during the last subcommittee meeting?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
He didn't share that with me, and so I don't have that information available at the moment.
Okay. Claudette, could we ask for that to be sent to the committee? And that way we can go through it, look at it, and then add additional changes. And then by that point, we should also have the information from the data team as well, the data review.
Right, and Miguel will be here. I'll be there as well, so I'll capture as much information as I can. To your point, Mordecai, there is a process about open-ended questions. I think they're really trying to gather some more information, but we'll see what the data team, because that whole team just really focuses on the survey questions. Is this question really relatable to what your outcomes need to be? So there's a lot that goes into that those reviews, and they probably will have some good suggestions at that point. But we can bring that back to you guys.
Are we concerned about some of the questions for the counselors that they would even have the answers? I mean, this one that breaks down the desktop computer, laptop computer, smartphone, mobile, how would the counselors know that?
That was my question. How would they know, and how does it come into our system to determine the data analytics for those applications coming in different methods?
And please know, I'm going to make this comment prefaced by saying this is meant to no disrespect to the work that's been done. It's just as we look at these questions and the tone of the questions. For instance, one of the questions, how difficult was it for your student to complete ApplyTexas? And so we've already set a tone of that they had a difficult or a negative experience. And so just hoping that, again, I don't know if the data team looks at that, but it's very important that we are intentional about the kinds of questions that we're asking and the tone in which we're asking those questions.
And we did, the subcommittee did discuss that specifically.
And Rebecca, the same question is asked for higher ed institutions, and most of the time, unless you're doing some type of application drive, that's the only point in time in which you know how a student actually may be applied to your institution.
Agreed.
But I think, I think recruitment staff get a feel for that. And so hopefully some recruitment staff will actually be asked to fill this out as well. I mean, that'll be part of the, who are we going to target? Who are we going to send it? Because they kind of know, I would think.
And didn't Zach include that in his presentation? And David, is that available, the way people are filling out the application? Don't we already have access to that data as to whether or not it was on a phone or a laptop or a desktop?
Yes, we do have some of that.
We might not need to ask that depending on what we could get already from ApplyTexas.
We have the half that's about technology, but not the half about whether it's with classmates or with parents, that kind of thing.
I think if that was added, if we didn't add, there should also be with like an admissions professional, because there are many institutions that actually go into the school and help students fill out their application, and we're not asking that question there. We're only asking if it was done individually, but there are many times that there are professionals that actually help them walk through the application process.
Are there any other comments?
So this is Becky. I just find it kind of strange that you enter these surveys into these free-form fields. That's not my typical experience with surveys. The ask free-form text before I ask, offered some other multiple choice or yes/no questions. And I wonder if we're going to get feedback that then, because anytime you allow people to do free-form feedback, you make reviewing the survey more complicated. And so you're asking any of these groups first about feedback, and then you're asking them questions. You might have skipped the trouble of having to decipher the feedback if you had asked them the question first. Does that make sense? And that could be something as simple as, what kind of was it easy or hard to complete the application?
Thank you for that. Thank you. And it makes perfect sense.
And I think studies show that, you have to get people warmed up. I can click a couple of times, but if I had to start writing stuff from the beginning, they're not going to finish that survey. It's just how it works.
For those that are part of the strategic planning committee, was the hope, can you walk us through what the hope was or the next steps were? Let me go that way. The next steps were after these results were compiled.
I'm not certain about timeline. Well, the timeline is what Mike just shared with us. Yeah. But from my understanding, they were going to use the list of those individuals that were compiled last year, because the group was asked to send a listing of all those that they wanted to include. Like for us, we would say our ApplyTexas advisors, we have 110. I mean, that's a small amount, but, we also have the counselor suite individuals that are on the counselor seat, we have access to their emails. So we would send that out to them, you know. So there were different populations that he requested, and I think that was compiled, but I don't know what that looks like, how much that is. So from what I understood is that they were going to send these surveys out with a limited amount of time, get the feedback, and analyze the feedback, and then share the results to see what was going to happen, or what was discussed, what popped up, what rose to the top as far as efficiency, things like that. That's what I had understood was going to happen. Now that we have the timeline, because that wasn't really shared during our meeting, but we have a better timeline of when that's supposed to be done. They actually tried to do this last year. My concern was the timing of it wasn't right, because I think they were trying to do it at the end of May, and students were already done with the application early in November. So what was the real, what would you gain from that? You know, that was one of my concerns. So that's why I think the progress might be, a little bit slow, but, it's all about timing. And I think right now is a good time, the time frame that's been laid out, because they've already gone through the first semester, as a senior, the first semester, they could probably provide some good feedback as a student and a counselor.
I have one more question, and I wasn't able to be on the last call when y'all discussed surveys. So what was the purpose of the demographic questions at the end of the surveys? Asking the gender and the ethnicity of the counselors.
Same, yeah. They all receive the same. My apologies. They all receive the same. Every population group that's been identified receives the same race and gender identification question.
I can almost see it with the students, because it might be reflective of what resources they have available to them, or if we see a certain particular group of students is having more difficulty, or saying that the application is harder than others. So I can almost see it with this. I mean, I can kind of see it with the students. I'm just not sure with the counselors. When I got to that point in the survey, I was kind of shocked to see it. I was like, why do you want to know?
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that, Becky.
Yeah, I would too.
The only other, and I was there in the meeting, but I don't remember if we discussed this, I forgot. But about the branding of the survey, did we talk about it being branded coming from ApplyTexas and not the University of Texas?
Yes, we did, and that's why that conversation led to approvals, because if it's related, and we made it clear after talking with our internal entities, is that since this is a reflection of committee work, which is statutorily regulated and part of the coordinating board, that's why we have to receive those approvals. So I was thinking that if this was Zach Taylor's separate, work, that would be fine, but it's on behalf of the ApplyTexas group, so it would need to go through approvals before it's submitted out to anybody. So, you're welcome.
Any other comments? So as we were talking earlier about communication plan, we talked about TACRO and its involvement. We're now talking about the survey. Certainly, hopefully we all see how all of these tie into one another, right, in terms of hearing back from all of our stakeholders, our user groups, in terms of what will be the future planning and implementation of features for ApplyTexas. Just think it's important that we begin to move, as we move into 2020, really begin to identify some hard timelines in terms of when these responses, the utilization of these responses, and then how we're communicating that back out to our stakeholders as part of that communication plan. And then, again, I look forward to seeing what the response rate is going to be on this survey, and we can kind of go from there. Off the top of your head, Claudette, has there been a certain percentage of response rate? Is this an unfair question to ask you on the spot? Probably is, but just curious to know what has been the historical response rate percentage as you all have put out these surveys to the group as a whole, the state as a whole, and what we consider to be a positive response rate and not a positive response rate.
That's an excellent question that I do not have an answer for.
Okay.
But I haven't put out any surveys. The last time I did a survey was for some other work I was doing in Success, when I was in the Success Division, which was probably about 8 years ago. So I couldn't tell you the response rates of typical for this specific topic. We haven't done this since I've come on board, so that's why it's good in theory. We're just hoping we get, again, the amount of responses necessary. So I think what I'd like to do is revisit with Miguel what the list looks like, and, do they have the appropriate amount of people for each of these survey subgroups, and then see what that might look like. And then if he wants to also ask for additional names or additional groups that we could send this out to, that might also be helpful. And he might approach you guys again to get more information. I know we have a list of counselors that are in the ApplyTexas Counselor Suite already. We have that group that we can send out for the counselor subgroup, which is extensive. But we don't have, I wouldn't know where to go to some of the others, like students specifically, unless we were to go through our ApplyTexas, our Advise Texas, schools, which is only 110. And that's a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of high schools that we have. So I don't really know.
I would also recommend that we share it on the TACRO and TACAC listserv as well, because especially the comment about admission counselors or admission representatives being able to provide information. So, sometimes if it's going to a specific person and not a listserv, then it's not shared with everybody in that team or in that office. So I think that also could be helpful and increase the respondent rate.
Yeah, Jamie, what you think in terms of would all 4 of the surveys be appropriate for that? Or would we have to choose the ones that would most appropriate?
I would choose the ones that are most appropriate.
I don't know if the danger is the right word to use, but the danger in as we increase the universe, the population of those that receive the survey, this becomes the means in which perhaps maybe for the first time that they've heard from ApplyTexas. So I've received nothing from you at all about anything.
How did you get my email?
Yeah, how'd you get my email? Right, but now you want to ask me, these questions, and I don't even know why you're asking me these questions. And so I think that if there's an opportunity for us to have just another conversation, in terms of the sequence of the communication, right? I haven't heard anything. I don't know what you're doing, but now all of a sudden you want to ask me, all of these questions. And so we have an opportunity there to make sure that we are truly putting the best foot forward, the best face forward strategically.
And I agree with you. I think at one time when I saw this, I think there needed to be a little bit more context in this before you enter into the survey to say what the purpose is and things like that. I don't know if I made that comment on the subcommittee group, but that's something that I think needs to happen as well.
We'll also think as we move to high school counselors or to that particular group and to higher ed, there's no way to identify who you are, because sometimes the secretary is just as important in that counseling office and probably has more perspective sometime than the counselor. And to know what role you play in a certain office may also have perspective in how you answer that question. And we don't have an identifier, or I didn't see it in those to say, if I'm an admissions counselor, I'm on the ground every day versus I'm the director of the office and maybe I hear third party, this is what's happening. So sometimes perspective, I think, is important in some of those surveys to know who's actually, what role they play in filling that out.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just on the first one.
Oh, yes. Okay, very good. Very good point. So to go back to what it was that I was discussing earlier, so we have 4 different surveys. Are there any comments in regards to the secondary school counselor survey? Okay.
I would just say the same thing about the demographic questions at the end.
Very good. Any comments in regards to the institutional professionals using ApplyTexas survey? Okay. Any comments in regards to the ApplyTexas survey for students?
On this one, I do think the demographic questions are appropriate. Good demographic questions. I think it could help us identify groups of students that we might be leaving behind.
Any other comments?
I think to go back to your question about the statement of the tone and how difficult is it, something that we also mentioned was our definitions for easy or difficult are going to be different for every person on how they interpret that. And so I think one of the things we possibly mentioned was, depending on what they answer, adding a little space to say, well, why was it easy or why was it difficult, to maybe help get some more clarification on that.
Thank you. Any comments in regards to, I'm going to move on to the ApplyTexas survey for parents. Any comments regarding the parent survey?
We did have one on our call as well. If you're looking at the question that talks about how important is it for ApplyTexas to be, and then it lists several things, and one of the questions is offered in multiple languages. So we thought if we're asking that question, the people we probably need to hear from need to be able to read the survey in Spanish. So I think he said that they were going to be able to provide these surveys in Spanish if needed. And I think we had only mentioned Spanish. I don't know if there were other languages that needed to be translated or not.
It was just Spanish from what I understood, but, I mean, then we going down to a deep hole, because, yeah.
And Qualtrics allows you to do the translation right there for the survey, so I'll be happy to help with that if you guys need that.
Well, and if it is only Spanish we're talking about, then shouldn't we say that when we ask the question as well? Here in the Metroplex and in the Houston area, I know at least we would probably have some interest in Vietnamese. But if we're only talking about Spanish, I think we should say Spanish and or when we have that question, should it be in the other languages, give them a choice of a few languages, or just Spanish if that's all we can really accomplish.
Thank you for that comment. My last comment would essentially be, and I'll make the comment, and then I'll also will put myself out there to help because I understand what I'm about to say. One of the characteristics that were found to be about the ApplyTexas app was that we had, again, a 14 grade level readability. And so as we talk about readability of the survey and understanding that we're now going out to our users in comparison to some of the other competitive systems, Common Application, Universal College Application, these are readability scores that are much lesser than the 14th grade level. And so I'm not saying that we should have the opportunity to begin to grade the readability of the survey itself, but I think that we need to be aware of what we're putting out there, and is the survey in itself difficult? If the language of the application is one of the highest in terms of its readability scores, are we now essentially, as we're seeking to find out whether or not our program is of ease, if the survey is certainly not of ease, then we can expect not to receive a better result in terms of its readability. So I'll put that out there, but I also will say that I'm open to be able to help to look at where we can streamline in terms of language and see essentially if there's a way to even streamline the questions that are being asked, of course working with the group and the body that's doing this work to make sure that we can get the highest response rate possible, because that's what this is really all about. Are there any other comments in regards to any of the surveys? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to review. And I will move this back to Rebecca, I believe, for future agenda items, potential agenda items, next meeting dates.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're on item H. Good job, everyone. Which is discussion of potential agenda items and the next meeting date. So I was looking over some of the work that we've done today to see what potential agenda items we would have. If you look back at our agenda today, I see it being very similar to the agenda that we had this time, minus C, which was the update on the annual report. We won't need that update. That may be the only thing I was going to take out, but we would like to see if Zach could do his presentation. So that would be an addition to the agenda for next time. We need to leave Speedy, EDI, ApplyTexas workshop on there. Oh, and on the subcommittees, we need to add the communication subcommittee. Yes. Does anyone see anything else that needs to be added or removed from this week's, or this meeting's agenda that might help us in formatting the next one?
Would the strategic planning update also encompass the survey update as well? Was that all one and the same?
Yes, from my, like, that's a comprehensive update from him.
Yes. Yes.
Actually be adoption, wait, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we would have the welcome, the adoption of minutes, the update from subcommittee, strategic planning, a residency question, logic, and communications. We would have the update from the ApplyTexas technical team, discussion and consideration of proposed changes or procedures, Zach's presentation, if he can be here. If not, maybe Miguel can do it. And then our agenda items for the next meeting. Does that sound right to everybody? The next meeting date, I believe, has been set.
Was
think- I think we got confirmation on that one.
February 24th?
February 24th.
I think it's February 24th and then April 20th,
Okay, so,
I believe. But you'll get a confirmation, just so you know.
but if you do want to go ahead and put it on your calendar, that'd be great. So February 24th and April 20th? Okay. Thank you all for helping to get those set, especially Diana here had to go and work some magic, I think, to find us a place. Okay. I think with that setting of the agenda and the announcement of the dates, I believe that we are ready to adjourn. Is there a motion that would agree with that?
I motion to adjourn.
Thank goodness. Thank you, Angie. I was like, unless y'all want to stay longer. And a second?
I'll second that.
I was quite enthusiastic. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, good. Thank you, phone. No, I think she's good. I think they just it takes a bit for them to be able to say so. Anyone opposed, same sign. Thank you all for hanging with us at ApplyTexas today, and we will see you in February.
Happy holidays.
Christmas, I guess, come first.